Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SIG Windows meetup. Thank you all for attending. It's the 17th of September, and as always, please adhere to the code of conduct by CNCF, as this is a recorded meeting. All right, so a couple of things really quickly. The first one is a contributor summit. So we talked about that last week. The sign up is up. I put it in the SIG Windows notes. If you're interested in attending, please sign up. It's free for all the contributors, which all of you guys are. You get a t-shirt, you get a meal out of it, and there's also a social event on Sunday night, which is usually, not usually, it is sponsored by CNCF, and it's usually a fun party. So you get to meet a lot of contributors from the community, a lot of the people that approve your PRs, a lot of the people that you send emails and Slack messages to. So it's a good way to form some personal connections that will kind of further our agenda as Windows and also create some new connections for you guys. So I highly recommend it. It was fun last time. I believe me and Craig were the only guys from SIG Windows that were there at the last event. But I do encourage more of you guys to be there, especially if you're coming to San Diego. The next one is, I know last week we talked about the mutating admission controller that Nick had, and we kind of said, everyone think about that a little bit and see if, what should we do about that? Should we try to document it, try to ship it with Kubernetes? And I personally think that the best route for the first iteration of that is to do documentation and try to get as many eyeballs and users to utilize that admission controller. And if things we're getting a lot of favorable customer reactions on that, then we can see about shipping that as well. And one of the things we asked Nick was to see if he could actually add the tolerations as part of the admission controller. Any other thoughts and ideas on that one?
So I was talking with Craig, and there's a project called Gatekeeper, and it might be nice to leverage Gatekeeper instead of writing your own controller.
Can Gatekeeper actually mutate a deployment or not?
I think Craig mentioned it can now.
Oh, okay.
Maybe that's...
Okay, that might be good to investigate then and come back to us and see if regardless, one of the things that Nick, you should do, you should still check into SIG Windows Tools, your code. That way, if other folks are interested in looking at it and playing with it, we can have it. I don't know if you added the tolerations part or not, but regardless, that might be a V2 thing. And as you're investigating Gatekeeper, we can look into that too.
I didn't add the tolerations. Right now, what we did is we forked an example mutating webhook admission controller source code, and one of the people that checked in hadn't signed the CNCF CLA, and even though I then migrated the code to third party, the problem is the code was originally not in third party, and the CLA robot is discovering this and blocking the control or the check-in. If the person does not respond, I will squash the commits and just move it into third party. But because it's nice to have history, I was going to preserve it and see if it can get checked in that way. So I do have a PR open, but it's blocked right now.
Got it. Thank you. All right, and as you find out more details about Gatekeeper, if you can bring it up again to the community meeting, that'd be great, so we can educate everybody as well. All right, is there anything else on 116 before we move to 117 and some of the planning items? Anybody that wants to bring up anything on that area? Yeah, actually, Jeremy, now that we're on the recorded line, you want to give you a quick 2-minute update on the tests that you're validating that you kind of finished?
Yeah, I had to create a second extension for the GMSA testing so that one of them brings up the domain controller in the domain. The other one adds the worker nodes as members of the domain because you cannot schedule GMSA pods on a domain controller. They don't work. So that's all set up now. I've tested it multiple times on my end, and everything's worked great. So that's up for review right now. Should be ready to go.
Excellent, great job sticking with that, and thank you, Adelina, for taking some of the validation aspect of this as well. Thank you.
Yeah. If you can ping me on that review on Slack, I'll take a look at it today as well.
Okay.
Oh, you didn't get the 1,000 notifications, Patrick?
Let me see. My GitHub notification queue is up to it's only 1320 deep right now, so 1,320.
Just squash it as well. Just like just do a squash and start fresh. By the way, on GitHub now, it took me a little bit over a week because I forgot about it, but I did add both Ben and Deep, so both of them now are equipped to approve in the Kubernetes SIG repo, as well as in Kubernetes. They're both approved to do PRs on behalf of SIG Windows. So they're listed as SIG Windows leads and owners from a technical perspective. Cool. All right, let's move to 1.17. When we had the community meeting a week and a half ago, we kind of outlined what our next set of things that we want to do from SIG Windows, right? And there's two big areas, lots of little areas, right? We want to obviously keep moving GMSA forward. We want to keep, continuing some of the investments that we're making in other areas. Like the storage area and the proxy that we're doing there. But the other thing, the two big new investments that we wanted to do was Containerd and keep advancing kubeadm and Cluster API, specifically around KubA, KubB. And the focus from our team is to start catching up to the community in that area and the work that they're doing with the Cluster API. As well as obviously with Containerd. So Patrick, you want to talk a little bit about Containerd, and then I'll move on to the Cluster API work?
Sure. Yes, I've got a link to the board on there. So just for bookkeeping purposes, I need to go update the KEP to reflect that we're focusing out for 17. I went through and started a list of the work that I knew was needed in a project board there. A couple of those things are just there as notes so we don't lose track of them, but they need to be changed into issues. So Adelina's team is currently investigating some of the test failures and getting those fixed, or rather getting some of the logs handed off. I've got an interesting column here. It says assigned to Windows team. And so there are some where we're collecting the Windows side of the traces and then handing it off to the contributors that were working on Containerd as part of the Windows team to get them to actually dig into that. I've got two of them listed there already, but there will probably be a few more. Anyway, I'm expecting them to be able to make some more progress on these now. As the Containerd stuff is a little bit further along, I think they're going to have some time to start looking at Kubernetes specific bugs. And then also Lantau has started reviewing some of the Containerd changes as well as related to Windows. So Yuju and Lantau have been in the loop on that too. I think that's pretty much it for now. The other thing that's interesting is that we do have some of the things that require single file mappings, like supporting the dev termination file, seem to be working in Containerd. And so you're also going to see a group of work items coming up where we'll be figuring out how we enable those tests on Containerd, but not on Docker shim. And so we'll probably need to do some new creative tagging or something along those lines in order to make that work.
Cool, thank you, Patrick. Any questions? Or I guess the other thing is on Containerd, do you also have enough resources to keep advancing that, or do you need more help from the community, or is there anybody else that wants to volunteer themselves to help on this?
I mean, I think we've got enough people to sort of get started, but one of the things that I could really use some help in is if anybody can help do some comparative testing, because the tests that we're running right now don't look at performance at all. And so I think it would be good for us to have some performance testing within the SIG, so that way we could do an A/B comparison between them, because that's not something that I have enough resources to do right now. And I really want that to sort of be led by some of the customer, based on some of the customer feedback we've had, which we don't really have much as related to performance right now. And so for people that are deploying it, I'd love to get some feedback in there, turn that into tests that we can run in both places.
So there's the informal testing there, which is people using it, right? Which you definitely will get. But I guess my question now shifts a little bit to Adelina. What kind of tests are there in the Kubernetes suites that deal with performance specifically, right? Everything from pod stand-up to request return to, how quickly you can scale it, how quickly you can provision it. Is there anything like that out there?
There are not. In the tests that we're running, the E2E tests, the conformance ones, there's nothing like that. There is a repo, a project in Kubernetes that deals with performance testing that I remember talked about somewhere last year, I guess, or at the beginning of this year. I don't remember exactly, but I guess that could work. But of course, with the mentions that it may probably be too much of an investment to adapt it to Windows, and I don't know the status of that, to be completely honest. I don't know if it's still a thing they're using or not, but I think that since we have SIG Windows test, I guess we can get creative and have our own tests, or if not, maybe in time develop something for the SIG. Let's say a framework, though it doesn't have to be something that's complicated, but just a way to put down some metrics. Want to see this, and a simple way of testing them.
Can you send me a link to that performance repo? I'll talk to them and see what it looks like. I mean, if it's simple for us to adapt it for Windows, why not just use it? But if you can send me that, I'll do a little bit of investigation there. Thank you.
As I remember, the last time we looked into it, it was a little bit more complicated, but then we abandoned it because release came and we couldn't. But yeah, just a second. I'll link it here in the docs.
Excellent, thank you. Or you can just Slack me.
What version of Containerd are people using?
We're having
version.
Oh. Yeah, we're having to build it from Justin Terry's branch.
Okay.
There's not even a release yet that works. I know that Justin and Lantau were talking about trying to get some of this stuff merged, but I don't know if there's a binary release yet.
Okay. Is there, I don't know, what would be a good reference, I guess? Is there like some scripts that you all use in CI for this?
Sure, I'll get those added to the notes.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Patrick, not to muddy up the waters here really on that, but so moving forward with Containerd, obviously that's going to introduce Hyper-V container support as well. One of the things that we're going to have to look for, and we're going to need a lot of guidance from Microsoft here, is that most of the, let's call it the enterprise distributions of Kubernetes that are made by vendors, whether that's public cloud providers or even on-premise ones, they run the container host on top of a virtual machine. And if that virtual machine is not sitting on top of the Hyper-V platform, having nested Hyper-V where the bottom hypervisor is no Hyper-V, I believe is not supported by Microsoft. So even if it may or may not work, it might be worthwhile for us to explore what will happen in that scenario. Like, we don't want to enable Containerd with Hyper-V isolated containers and then preclude half the distributions out there from being able to utilize that feature, unless you're Azure, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that's really something that needs to just kind of happen on the business side. And
maybe if we can get some contacts on that, we can get on some meetings out of this SIG, obviously.
So there was something called the Windows Server virtualization validation platform, and that provided the framework for supportability between different hypervisor vendors. And I think that would need to be amended to include this use case.
Possibly, yeah. Gives us enough leeway right now. I mean, I know those things don't happen overnight, so they need a long time to change. So if we're going down this path, it might be worthwhile for us to start kind of planting the seeds on this as well.
I'll see if I can at least find a name of who owns that program, so that way, someone could reach out to them that owns a different hypervisor.
Yeah, me and Ben will likely spearhead that effort from a VMware Pivotal standpoint. I don't know if anybody here is from Red Hat, but they'll likely have the same thing. And Google probably has something like that, some requirement like that as well. All right, let's move on. Yeah, if you can do that, Patrick, that'd be great. Thank you. Just shoot me an email offline. We talked about GMSA earlier and CSI proxy. Obviously, we're going to continue our investments there. Deep, is there any specific on the CSI work that you'll be looking to add beyond adding more providers, I guess?
Yeah, mainly it's getting the API to a V1 alpha, like get that kind of wrapped up. We are doing a lot of reviews right now. Reviews are in progress. Peter Horniak took a pretty good look. Michelle Au from the SIG storage is also going through it this week, or rather will go through it. And yeah, once that's done, the basic aim is like get that API to a solid V1 alpha, which supports iSCSI, SMB, as well as the basic locally attached storage scenarios.
Thank you. All right, and then on the kubeadm cluster API, obviously Kalia and Lubomir, and I don't see Lubomir, it's pretty late for him right now. But thank you for all the work you guys did for kubeadm and getting into alpha. I think the next step, tremendous work actually. Thank you so much. Now the next step is continuing to advance the vision of kubeadm, and at the same time starting to look into what would it take for us to enable cluster API here. And and we mentioned earlier we might start for Kub Azure and Kub AWS and Kub vSphere. Those might be the first 2 or 3 providers that we're gonna look to. Cluster API did ship V1 Alpha 2 not too long ago, so now it's an opportunity for us to start thinking how can we plug in the Windows work into that. Kalia, is that something that you will continue investing some of your time on the kubeadm and cluster API front, or do you need some help? How does resourcing look like on your end?
Yeah, for me, I think our team is definitely following up with it, and I will be leading that. Depending on how cycles work for my team, I may not be doing, I don't know if I'll be doing all of the continuing work, but I still will play a part. I think it just will be looping in others from the team.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, if you can let us know, and if you can take more of as your time obviously permits, if you can let us know where we need to plug in more resources, we can definitely help.
Yeah, I'll sync with my manager and let you know. But also, as a quick aside, I noticed our intern was trying to use my scripts. And so we passed the Docker check because it's just based on version number. And he was using Docker Desktop for Windows. but that actually doesn't work out for Kubernetes. So I wondered if anyone had any context on that.
Is it just because it was running in like the Linux mode? I'm not sure why Docker Desktop
No,
would be
there
any
was some
different.
weird error saying it couldn't do something because a container already existed. I'm not sure what it was. It kind of looked like it might have been like a V1, V2 namespace issue. I don't think it can handle pods.
You can ping me offline, Debroy, and I can ask someone in Docker to get some information.
Okay, thanks.
If they were on Windows 10 instead of Windows Server, it defaults to Hyper-V isolation, and so that could have been a problem.
They're on Windows Server.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's take that offline. And also one other thing to mention on the CapV, at least for vSphere, I'm trying to get some resources from VMware for that. All right, I don't see Chang here from AWS. I know me and Patrick had talked to Tim Pepper and others offline about that backport of the AWS storage support. The request was denied, and actually that led to some additional documentation around cherry picks that Tim Pepper spearheaded that kind of lays the groundwork on what is possible for a backport versus not, and what's cherry pick only bug fixes and not features. So that will help establish the bar for the community and moving forward. And I see Deep added one more thing here, which is power support for Windows containers. So Deep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore this. This will become more important for at least some of the CSI work where we want to release, have a release pipeline that's based on Prow, but because all the other CSI tools use Prow. And we're just wondering, like, do we have cycles to kind of look at this? I might be able to, me or Jean might be able to help with this. I know Adelina had some thoughts, so just kind of kicking off a discussion on what needs to be done here and kind of following up and seeing what we can achieve. So very exploratory at the moment. I'm just putting it down as something that might be useful to have.
So are you trying to build containers?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
Like based with Windows Server basis or Server Core on 7 Nano.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a PR open on related to that, but there's still an outstanding thing where we were trying to figure out how the nodes would be provisioned, but they're looking at opening up the Docker port over SSL within the Prow cluster.
Can you link that PR somewhere or just send me? That'd be good.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
Awesome, thanks.
It's the work related to building the test images, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So I thought Claudio had a PR open for that, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Claudio has PRs open for porting the images. The exact way in which the machine is set up is written in a doc. I think it's not an actual PR.
Oh, okay.
Because we still need to figure out how to set the machine and all that stuff, and who owns it, and the exact pipeline for building the images.
Okay. All right. I thought I had written this up in a doc or a PR, so I'll dig that up and we can continue that next week.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Excellent. Any other questions or concerns? We have 1 minute left. All right, everybody have a good rest of your day. Congrats on the release 1.16 coming out tomorrow. We put a lot of hard work into this, so thank you for contributing to that. And let's kick off 117 on the high note. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.